I stood in the parking lot of my own bakery at 3 in the morning, staring at the eviction notice taped to the glass door. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone to call my daughter. 23 years. 23 years of 4 a.m. wake-ups, flour under my fingernails, and birthday cakes that made children's eyes light up. And now, some smooth-talking investment advisor named Marcus Chen had convinced me to put everything, my savings, my business account, even my retirement funding, into what he called a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The opportunity was gone, and so was my money. I'm Margaret Whitfield. I'm 58 years old, and I was about to lose everything I'd spent 2 decades building in Richmond, Virginia. But what happened next taught me the most valuable lesson of my entire business career. A lesson that eventually turned my struggling bakery into a chain of 7 successful locations across 3 states. This is the story of how I almost lost it all, and how my years of hard-earned experience became the greatest asset I never knew I had. Let me take you back 6 months before that terrible morning in the parking lot. My bakery, Margaret's Morning Glory, sat on the corner of West Broad Street and Harrison, right in the heart of Richmond's historic fan district. The building was old-fashioned in 1924, with original hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places and windows that caught the morning sun perfectly. I bought it 15 years ago with money I'd saved working double shifts as a hotel pastry chef. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., I'd unlock that heavy wooden door, flip on the lights, and breathe in the smell of yesterday's vanilla and cinnamon still lingering in the air. By 5 a.m., my assistant Rosa would arrive, and we'd start the daily rhythm. Croissants first, then the sourdough, then the specialty cakes for the day's orders. My daughter Jennifer used to joke that I loved that bakery more than I loved sleeping. She wasn't wrong. But 6 months before the eviction notice, things started getting tight, really tight. A new shopping complex opened 2 miles away with a fancy French bakery that had marble countertops and a coffee bar that looked like something out of a magazine. My regular customers, the ones who'd been coming for years, started trickling away. First, Mrs. Patterson stopped ordering her weekly pound cake. Then the Henderson family canceled their standing Saturday morning order. Within 3 months, my revenue had dropped by 40%. I tried everything. I offered discounts. I created a loyalty program. I even started a Facebook page, though I could barely figure out how to post photos without Jennifer's help. Nothing worked. One Tuesday afternoon, while I was restocking the display case with what few pastries I had left, a man in an expensive gray suit walked in. He had perfect teeth, a gold watch that caught the light when he moved, and the kind of confidence that made you want to believe every word he said. "Margaret Whitfield?" he asked, extending his hand. "My name is Marcus Chen. I'm a financial consultant with Prestige Investment Solutions. I've been watching your business, and I think you're sitting on a gold mine." I should have walked away right then. I should have asked for references, called the Better Business Bureau to do any kind of research at all. But Marcus had something I desperately needed: hope. He slid into one of my cafe chairs and pulled out a sleek tablet. "Margaret, can I be honest with you? Your problem isn't your product. Your cinnamon rolls are the best I've ever tasted. Your problem is you're thinking too small." I sat down across from him. My apron was still dusted with flour. "What do you mean? You're working 16-hour days to make, what, maybe $60,000 a year, when you could be making $600,000 by this time next year, maybe more." My heart started racing. $600,000. I could expand. I could compete with that fancy French place. I could finally give Rosa the raise she deserved. "How?" I asked, leaning forward. Marcus smiled. "Have you heard of cryptocurrency?" The word sounded foreign and exciting, like something people in Silicon Valley did, not middle-aged bakers in Richmond. But Marcus explained it in a way that made perfect sense. He showed me charts on his tablet, lines that went up and up and up, promising returns of 400%, 600%, even 1,000%. The secret, he said, lowering his voice like he was sharing something precious, is getting in early. Right now, we have an exclusive opportunity with a new digital currency called Luna Coin. It's about to explode, but the window closes in 72 hours. 72 hours. The urgency made my stomach flip. How much would I need to invest? I asked. Marcus leaned back, studying me with those confident eyes. To really make an impact, to really change your life? I'd recommend at least 100,000, but I understand if that's too much. You could start with 50 and still see significant returns. $100,000. I didn't have that kind of money just sitting around. My business account had about 30,000. My personal savings had another 40, and my retirement fund, the one I'd been contributing to since I was 35, had about 50,000. I don't know, I said, doubt creeping into my voice. That's everything I have. Marcus nodded sympathetically. I understand. It's scary. But Margaret, can I ask you something? When you started this bakery, were you scared then? Terrified, I admitted. But you did it anyway, and look what you built. This is the same thing, just on a bigger scale. The difference is, this time, you don't have to do it alone. I'll be managing everything for you. All you have to do is trust me. Trust. That word hung in the air between us. Let me think about it, I said. Of course. Marcus stood, straightening his jacket. Take your time. You have 72 hours. But Margaret? He paused at the door. Don't let fear steal your future. You've worked too hard for too long to stay small. After he left, I stood in my empty bakery, looking at the worn wooden floors, the vintage mixer that had belonged to my grandmother, the framed photo of my late husband Daniel that I kept by the register. Daniel had died 7 years ago from a sudden heart attack, leaving me to run everything alone. What would you do, honey? I whispered to his picture. But Daniel wasn't there to answer. I was alone with the biggest decision of my life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled up Luna Coin on my laptop, or at least I tried to. The website looked professional, with testimonials from people who claimed they'd made millions. There were photos of young people on yachts, in front of expensive cars, holding up checks with unbelievable amounts. Jennifer called around 10 p.m. Mom, you sound weird. What's wrong? I told her about Marcus and Luna Coin. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Mom, she finally said, her voice tight with worry. That sounds like a scam. You don't know that, I said, more defensively than I intended. You didn't meet Marcus. He's a professional. A professional con artist, maybe. Mom, please, don't do this. If it sounds too good to be true, Jennifer, I love you, but you're 28 years old. You don't know what it's like to watch something you built for 23 years slowly die. I need to do something. Then do something smart, she pleaded. Hire a real financial advisor. Talk to your accountant. Just please, please don't give money to some stranger who walked into your bakery promising miracles. We ended the call with both of us frustrated. Jennifer didn't understand. She had her whole life ahead of her, a good job as a graphic designer, no debt. She didn't know what it felt like to be 58 and terrified that everything you'd worked for was slipping away. The next morning, Marcus called. Margaret, I hope I'm not being too pushy, but I wanted to let you know we only have 48 hours left. The opportunity is closing fast. Several of my other clients have already jumped in. I'm still thinking, I said, my voice shaking slightly. I understand, but Margaret, I don't want you to look back in 6 months and regret not taking action. You strike me as someone who's always moved forward, not backward. After we hung up, I stared at my bank statements. $90,000 in total liquid assets, $120,000 if I cashed out my retirement early. Marcus had said $100,000 was the sweet spot. I called my accountant, Gerald Morrison. Gerald had been doing my books for 10 years. He was careful, methodical, and boring, exactly what you want in an accountant. Margaret, this sounds extremely risky, Gerald said after I explained the situation. I would strongly advise against putting your entire savings into any single investment, especially cryptocurrency. The market is highly volatile and largely unregulated. But what if this is real? I asked. What if this is my chance to actually grow? Then it will still be there after you've done proper research. Ask Marcus for documentation. Ask for proof of the company's registration. Ask to speak with other investors. If this is legitimate, he'll have no problem providing all of that. I called Marcus back and made Gerald's requests. Marcus sighed, but not angrily. It was a sad sigh, like a parent disappointed in a child. Margaret, I'm going to be honest with you. When people start asking for excessive documentation, it tells me they're not serious investors. The kind of opportunity I'm offering is for people who understand that sometimes you have to trust your gut and move quickly. By the time all the paperwork is filed and all the research is done, the opportunity is gone. That's how poor people think. Rich people take calculated risks. Something about being called a poor person stung. I'd worked my entire life. I'd put myself through culinary school. I'd built a business from nothing. I wasn't poor. I was just being careful. I need another day, I said. You have 24 hours, Marcus replied. After that, the window closes. I'm sorry, Margaret. I really am. I was hoping you'd be one of the ones who made it. I spent that night in my bakery, making bread. When I was anxious, I baked. Something about kneading dough with my hands, watching the yeast work its magic, waiting for the perfect golden brown crust. It helped me think. Rosa found me there at 11:00 p.m., up to my elbows in focaccia dough. Signora Margaret, what are you doing here so late? She asked, concern creasing her warm brown face. I told her everything, about Marcus, about Lunacoin, about the choice I was facing. Rosa pulled up a stool and sat quietly while I shaped the dough into rounds. Finally, she spoke. My cousin, Esteban. He got involved in something like this 2 years ago. A man came to his restaurant in Charlotte and told him about an investment opportunity, guaranteed returns, easy money. Esteban put in $40,000. What happened? I asked, though something in Rosa's tone told me I already knew. The man disappeared. The money was gone. Esteban almost lost his restaurant. He had to take out a second mortgage on his house. Rosa reached over and put her flour-dusted hand on mine. Senora, if something promises you get rich quick, it usually means someone else gets rich quick, and that someone is not you. I looked at this woman who had worked beside me for 8 years, who had never once been late, who knew my business almost as well as I did. Rosa didn't have a college degree. She'd come to Virginia from Honduras 20 years ago with 2 children and $10 in her pocket. But she had something I'd temporarily lost common sense. You're right, I said quietly. You're absolutely right. But when Marcus called the next morning with his final pitch, I made the worst decision of my life. I transferred $115,000 to Marcus Chen's investment account on a Thursday afternoon in April. It was every dollar I had. My business account, my personal savings, and my retirement fund cashed out early with a heavy penalty. Marcus had finally worn me down with one last conversation that felt less like a sales pitch and more like heart-to-heart. Margaret, I see myself in you, he said. I was once where you are, scared, uncertain, working myself to death for pennies while everyone else seemed to be getting ahead. Then someone gave me a chance, and it changed everything. Now I'm trying to give you that same chance, but I can't force you to take it. Some people are meant to stay small. I just didn't think you were one of them. Those words, stay small, echoed in my head like a taunt. I hadn't built Margaret's morning glory from nothing just to staying small. I hadn't survived my husband's death, years of pre-dawn mornings, competition from chain stores, and economic recessions just to give up now. So I wired the money. Marcus promised I'd see returns within 30 days. The market moves fast, he assured me. You'll have access to your investment portal by Monday, and you'll be able to watch your money grow in real time. Monday came. no portal access. I called Marcus. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Hi, this is Marcus Chen with Prestige Investment Solutions. Please leave a detailed message, and I'll return your call within 24 hours. I left a message, then another one Tuesday, then 3 more by Wednesday. By Friday, a week after transferring my life savings, Marcus's phone was disconnected. The Prestige Investment Solutions website has vanished, and I finally understood what I'd done. I'd been scammed. I didn't tell anyone at first. The shame was too heavy, too crushing. Every morning I went through the motions, unlocking the bakery, mixing dough, serving customers, while inside I was screaming. How could I have been so stupid? How could I have ignored every warning sign, every piece of good advice, every instinct that told me this was wrong? The bakery's bills started piling up. Without my business account cushion, I couldn't make payroll. I couldn't pay my suppliers. The rent on my building, $1,500 a month, was due, and I had exactly $327 in my personal checking account. 2 weeks after sending the money, I finally told Jennifer. She drove from her apartment in Washington, D.C., straight to Richmond. When she walked into my kitchen and saw me sitting at the table with all those unpaid bills spread out in front of me, she didn't say, "I told you so." She just sat down and cried with me. "Mom, we have to report this to the police," she said, wiping her eyes. "And tell them what? That I willingly gave $100,000 to a stranger because I was desperate and stupid." "You're not stupid," Jennifer said fiercely. "You were targeted by a professional con artist. There's a difference." We filed a police report that afternoon. Detective Raymond Torres at the Richmond Police Department was sympathetic but not hopeful. "Mrs. Whitfield, I'm going to be honest with you. These cryptocurrency scams are incredibly difficult to track. The money usually gets moved through multiple accounts in different countries within hours. We'll investigate, but I don't want to give you false hope about recovery." "How much did I lose?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "Everything," Detective Torres said gently. "I'm very sorry." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed calculating how much time I had before I lost the bakery. 2 months, maybe 3 if I could negotiate with my landlord. I'd have to let Rosa go, which broke my heart. She depended on that paycheck to support her 2 sons. At 2 a.m., I got up and drove to the bakery. I sat in my car in the empty parking lot, looking at the building I'd loved for 15 years. The streetlight cast shadows across the front window, where I'd painted "Margaret's Morning Glory" in gold letters. My first week in business. I thought about Marcus Chen and his expensive suit and his confident smile. I thought about all the ways I'd been manipulated, the urgency tactics, the ego stroking, the fear of missing out. I'd spent 23 years building a business, learning every lesson the hard way, developing instincts and judgment, and in 72 hours I'd thrown all of that experience away. But as I sat there in the darkness, something shifted inside me. The shame started transforming into something else, something harder and clearer: anger. I wasn't angry at Marcus Chen, though he deserved it. I was angry at myself for forgetting who I was. I was angry at letting fear and desperation override decades of hard-earned wisdom. I was angry for not trusting my own experience. But more than anger, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: determination. I'd built this bakery once from nothing. I could build it again, but this time I'd do it the right way. The way I should have done it from the beginning, by trusting my own judgment, my own skills, my own experience. I took out my phone and started making notes. Not about cryptocurrency or get-rich-quick schemes. About my business. About what had made Margaret's Morning Glory successful for 15 years, and what I needed to do to make it successful again. The next morning, I called a meeting with the only person I had left, Rosa. "Rosa, I need to be honest with you about something," I said, my voice shaking. "I made a terrible mistake, and it's going to affect both of us." I told her everything. About Marcus, about the money, about the bakery's financial situation. When I finished, I expected her to quit on the spot. Who would want to work for someone so foolish? Instead, Rosa crossed her arms and looked at me with those sharp, intelligent eyes. So, what are you going to do, Senora Margaret? I don't know, I admitted. I have about 8 weeks before I can't pay rent. I can probably make it that long by cutting every expense, but after that... I couldn't finish the sentence. Then we have 8 weeks to save this business, Rosa said firmly. What's our plan? Our plan? See, you think I'm going to let this bakery close? I've worked here for 8 years. This is my home too. So, what's our plan? For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. First, we need to figure out what makes us special. What do we have that fancy French place doesn't? Rosa smiled. Everything, Senora. We have everything they don't. Over the next week, Rosa and I did something I should have done months ago. We talked to our old customers. I called Mrs. Patterson, the woman who'd stopped ordering her weekly pound cake. Mrs. Patterson, this is Margaret Whitfield from Morning Glory Bakery. I noticed you haven't been in lately, and I wondered if I could ask why. Was there something wrong with our service? There was a pause on the other line. Oh, Margaret, no. Nothing was wrong. It's just, well, that new French place has such pretty packaging, and they have all these new flavors I'd never heard of. They make me feel sophisticated, I suppose, like I'm part of something trendy. I felt a pang in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. I understand. Thank you for being honest with me, Mrs. Patterson. Can I ask you one more question? When you ate our pound cake, how did it make you feel? Another pause. Happy, she said softly. It reminded me of my grandmother's kitchen. Safe, loved, home. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. That means more than you know. I had the same conversation with 15 other former customers. The pattern was clear. They didn't leave because our product was inferior. They left because we'd stopped telling our story. That French bakery had marble countertops and exotic flavors. But we had something they could never have. 23 years of being part of this community. That Sunday night, Rosa and I sat down with Jennifer, who'd driven down from D.C. to help, and we created what I called our comeback plan. We can't compete on fancy, I said, writing on a large notepad I'd spread across my kitchen table. We'll never have marble countertops or exotic ingredients, but we can compete on authenticity. We can compete in tradition. We can compete on being part of people's lives. Jennifer leaned forward. Mom, what if you told your story? The real story, not about Marcus and the scam, but about why you started this bakery, about Grandpa Daniel, about the recipes that have been passed down. People don't connect with perfection. They connect with truth. Something clicked in my mind. I'd been so focused on competing with that French bakery's aesthetics that I'd forgotten my actual strength. I'd been baking in this community for 23 years. I'd made birthday cakes for children who were now bringing in their own kids. I'd provided morning pastries for countless business meetings, comfort food for funerals, and celebration cakes for weddings. I wasn't just a baker. I was part of Richmond's fabric. Here's what we're going to do, I said, the plan crystallizing as I spoke. First, we're going back to basics. No discounts, no gimmicks. We're going to bake the recipes that made us famous. Grandma's cinnamon rolls, Daniel's chocolate bourbon cake, my sourdough that takes 3 days to make properly. Quality over quantity. Rosa nodded approvingly. This is who we've always been. Second, I continued, we're going to tell our story. Jennifer, can you help me create a real social media presence? Not just posting pictures, but actually connecting with people. Showing them the 4 a.m. mornings, the process, the heart that goes into every loaf. I can do that, Jennifer said, already making notes on her phone. And third, this is the hard part. I need to reach out to other small business owners in Richmond. Not to compete, but to collaborate. To remind people that when they support local businesses, they're investing in their community, not just in a product. Over the next 6 weeks, I worked harder than I'd ever worked in my life. But this time, it was different. I wasn't working out of fear or desperation. I was working from a place of purpose and strategy. Jennifer created an Instagram account for the bakery and taught me how to use it. Every morning, I'd post a video of myself starting the day's baking, talking about the recipes, sharing stories about customers and community. At first, I felt ridiculous talking to my phone, but Jennifer insisted, "Mom, people want to know the person behind the product. They want to feel connected." The response was slow at first. 20 followers, 50, 100. But then something shifted. People started sharing our posts. Local news blogger Amanda Chen, no relation to Marcus, thankfully, wrote an article about Richmond's most authentic bakery and featured my story. Not the scam part, just the 23 years of dedication and craft. Mrs. Patterson came back. She ordered her weekly pound cake and brought 3 friends with her. "Margaret," she said, tears in her eyes, "I didn't realize how much I'd missed this place. That French bakery is pretty, but it doesn't have a soul. This place has soul." I started partnering with other local businesses. The coffee shop 3 blocks away began featuring our pastries. The bookstore on Monument Avenue hosted a Saturday morning breakfast and books event using our baked goods. I created a Richmond Pride Box, a selection of items featuring recipes from different eras of Richmond history, with educational cards explaining the city's culinary heritage. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One Tuesday morning, a man in his 30s walked in, carrying a professional camera. "Mrs. Whitfield, my name is Thomas Rivera. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I saw your Instagram posts, and I wondered if you'd be interested in letting me film a short documentary about your bakery." I hesitated. "I'm not sure what there is to document." Thomas smiled. "That's exactly what there is to document. Most people think success in business means becoming the biggest, the flashiest, the most modern. But you're proving something different. You're proving that authenticity and tradition and community can compete with trends. That's a story worth telling." The documentary took 3 weeks to film. Thomas came in during my early morning baking sessions, interviewed long-time customers, filmed Rosa teaching me her mother's recipe for tres leches cake, which we were adding to our menu, and captured the daily rhythm of small business life. When he posted the 20-minute film on YouTube, I didn't expect much, maybe a few thousand views from locals. It got 200,000 views in the first week. Suddenly, people from all over Virginia were driving to Richmond to visit that authentic bakery from the documentary. The waiting time for custom cakes went from days to weeks. I had to hire back Rosa full-time and bring on 2 additional part-time bakers. The most surprising call came from Daniel Morrison, the owner of a local restaurant supply company. "Margaret, I've been following your comeback," he said. "I'd like to invest in your business. Not as a loan, as a partnership. I think Morning Glory Bakery could expand to other locations around Virginia, keeping the same authentic, community-focused approach. Would you be interested in discussing it?" 6 months ago, I would have jumped at this offer without thinking. But Marcus Chen Hadi taught me a valuable, expensive lesson. Not every opportunity is the right opportunity. "Can I think about it?" I asked. "Of course," Daniel said. "Take your time. Do your research. Talk to your accountant. Talk to a lawyer. If this is meant to happen, it'll happen at the right pace." I did exactly that. Gerald, my accountant, reviewed Daniel Morrison's business history. I hired a lawyer to look at the proposed partnership structure. I talked to other business owners who'd worked with him. Every reference checked out. Daniel wasn't offering quick riches. He was offering sustainable growth. After 3 weeks of due diligence, I said yes. That brings me to today, 18 months after I stood in a parking lot reading an eviction notice. Margaret's Morning Glory now has 3 locations, the original in Richmond's Fan District, a second in Charlottesville, and a third in Roanoke. We're planning 2 more in the next year, one in Norfolk and one in Fredericksburg. But here's what makes me proud. We didn't grow by compromising who we are. Every location maintains the same commitment to authentic baking, to community connection, to being part of the fabric of people's lives. We didn't expand by becoming like that French bakery with the marble countertops. We expanded by being more ourselves. Rosa is now our director of recipe development, overseeing the baking at all locations and training new bakers in our traditions. She makes more money than she ever dreamed possible, and her 2 sons are both in college. Jennifer left her graphic design job and now runs our marketing and brand development. She's engaged to Thomas, the documentary filmmaker, and they're getting married next spring. I'm making their wedding cake, naturally. The bakery's revenue has grown to $800,000 annually. I was able to put money back into a retirement account, a properly managed, boring retirement account that Gerald oversees. I'll never be rich, but I'm comfortable, secure, and doing work I love. But the most important thing I gained wasn't financial. It was wisdom. About 3 months ago, I got a call from Detective Torres. "Mrs. Whitfield, I wanted to let you know. We caught Marcus Chen. He's being charged with wire fraud and conspiracy. He scammed 47 other people in Virginia alone, most of them small business owners. Your testimony will be crucial for the prosecution." I testified at his trial last month. Marcus looked different in his orange jumpsuit, smaller, ordinary, nothing like the confident man in the expensive suit who'd walked into my bakery. When I was on the stand, his lawyer asked me, "Mrs. Whitfield, isn't it true that you chose to give Mr. Chen that money, that no one forced you?" I looked directly at Marcus when I answered, "Yes, I chose to give him the money, but I made that choice based on lies, manipulation, and my own desperation. He targeted me when I was vulnerable, and he was very, very good at his job. But here's what he didn't understand. You can steal someone's money, but you can't steal their experience. You can't steal their ability to learn, to adapt, to rebuild. He took $115,000 from me, but he gave me something worth much more. He taught me to trust my own judgment." Marcus was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. I'll likely never recover my original investment, but in a strange way, I don't want it back. That money bought me something more valuable than security. It bought me clarity. Last week, a young woman named Ashley Martinez walked into my original bakery. She reminded me of myself 25 years ago, eager, hardworking, scared, but hopeful. "Mrs. Whitfield, I'm thinking about opening my own coffee shop," she said nervously. "Everyone tells me I need to spend money on consulting services and business coaches and investment opportunities that will help me grow faster. But I watched your documentary and I wondered if I could ask your advice." I poured her a cup of coffee and sat down across from her, just like Marcus Chen had sat across from me 18 months ago. But I said something very different. "Ashley, here's what I learned the hard way. There are no shortcuts to building something real. Anyone who promises you easy money, fast growth, or effortless success is selling you a fantasy. The only real path to success is experience, learning your craft, serving your customers, making mistakes, and staying true to your values. It's slow, it's hard, and it's not glamorous, but it's real." "What about investors?" she asked. "What about people who want to help me grow?" "Some investors are genuine," I said, "but before you accept anyone's money or advice, ask yourself 3 questions. First, does this align with my values and my vision? Second, have I done thorough research and consulted with people I trust? And third, am I making this decision from a place of strength and clarity or from fear and desperation? If it's fear and desperation, wait, fear makes terrible business decisions." Ashley pulled out a notebook and started writing. "How do you know when you're ready to take a risk?" "You know when you've done the work," I said. "When you understand your business inside and out. When you have advisors you trust. When you're being honest about the risks and rewards. Real opportunities don't evaporate in 72 hours. Real opportunities are patient." We talked for 2 hours. When Ashley left, she hugged me and said, "Thank you for telling me the truth instead of what I wanted to hear." That's when I realized this experience had given me something I could never have planned, a platform to help other people avoid my mistakes. Now, once a month, I host a breakfast meeting at the bakery for local entrepreneurs. We call it the Real Talk Business Breakfast. No PowerPoint presentations, no motivational speakers promising instant success, just honest conversations about the challenges of building and sustaining a small business. We talk about cash flow problems, difficult customers, self-doubt, and the loneliness of being a business owner. But we also celebrate wins, share strategies, and support each other through the hard times. Last month, one of our members, a man named Carlos Delgado, who owns a landscaping company, stood up and said, "I want to thank Margaret for creating this space. Last year, I almost fell for an investment scam exactly like the one she went through. But because she was willing to share her story, I recognized the warning signs. She saved me from making the same mistake." That moment, more than any revenue number or expansion plan, showed me what my experience was really worth. Here's what I want you to understand. I'm not special. I'm not uniquely wise or talented. I'm just a baker from Richmond, Virginia, who made a catastrophic mistake and had to figure out how to survive it. But survival taught me something I never could have learned from smooth sailing. Your experience, every failure, every struggle, every lesson learned the hard way, is your most valuable business asset. Not because it prevents you from ever making mistakes again, but because it gives you resilience, judgment, and authenticity that no amount of money can buy. That French bakery with the marble countertops, it closed last month. Turns out pretty aesthetics and trendy flavors weren't enough to sustain a business when they had no real connection to the community. Margaret's morning glory is still here, not because we're perfect, but because we're real. I wake up at 4 a.m. every morning, and I still love unlocking that heavy wooden door. The floors still creak in all the right places. The windows still catch the morning sun perfectly. Rosa still arrives at 5 a.m. with her thermos of coffee and her infectious laugh. But now, when I look at that building, I don't just see a bakery. I see 23 years of experience that nobody can take away from me. I see the wisdom that comes from falling down and getting back up. I see the strength that comes from choosing the slow, authentic path instead of the fast, fraudulent one. Jennifer asked me last week if I regretted anything about the Marcus Chen situation. I thought about it carefully before answering. I regret the pain it caused. I regret almost losing everything. I regret not trusting my instincts sooner. But I don't regret the lessons, because those lessons made me the business owner I was supposed to be all along, someone who trusts her experience more than someone else's promises. My experience became my greatest asset not when things were easy, but when they were impossibly hard. And if you're out there right now, struggling with your business, facing impossible choices, wondering if you have what it takes, I want you to know something. You do. Your years of showing up, of learning your craft, of building relationships, of surviving difficult seasons, that's not wasted time. That's your foundation. That's your competitive advantage. That's your greatest asset. Don't let anyone, not a smooth-talking consultant, not a trendy competitor, not your own fear, convince you that your experience doesn't matter. It matters more than anything else. Trust it. Build on it. Let it guide you. Because in the end, authentic experience is the only investment that always pays returns. So here's my question for you. What's the most valuable lesson your experience has taught you about business, about money, about taking risks? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between a quick fix and the slow, authentic path? What did you do? How did it turn out? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Share your experiences, the good, the bad, and the lessons you learned along the way, because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, if you believe in the power of authentic, experience-based wisdom, please subscribe to this channel. I share stories like this every week, real stories about real people building real businesses and real lives, one honest decision at a time. We're building a community here of people who believe that true success isn't about getting rich quick. It's about getting rich slow, rich in experience, rich in relationships, rich in wisdom, and yes, eventually, rich in financial security that's built on a solid foundation. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this journey. Now go out there and trust your experience. It's worth more than you know. Until next time, this is Margaret Whitfield, reminding you that your experience is your greatest asset.